Before their final breath, people don't talk about money. They talk about the things they were too afraid to do. Jean, a 58-year-old nurse, has spent over 2 decades working in a hospice care unit on the outskirts of Atlanta. Every morning she walks the hallway, stopping at each room, delivering medication, checking breathing, changing IVs. But there are moments she will never forget, those silent, fragile minutes when an elderly patient nearing the end would squeeze her hand tightly and whisper something they had never told anyone before. "Jung, I wish I had told him how much I loved him. I wish I hadn't been afraid. I wanted to write a book, but I never started. I regret working so much. I miss so many dinners with my family. Don't be like me. Don't live a life that ends with a list of things you never had the courage to do." Jean can't forget those words, because they came from hundreds of people, all different in jobs, personalities, backgrounds, but all the same in one truth: at the end, they didn't remember what they owned. They remembered what they missed. I'm sharing this with you not to scare you, but to remind you you still have time, whether you're 55, 60, or 80. If you're reading this or hearing my voice right now, then something miraculous is still true. You can still change. You can still take a new path. You can still say, "I'm sorry." You can still learn how to forgive. You can still rise from that chair and walk toward an old dream you left behind. You can still live without carrying regret. The biggest regrets in old age don't come from the mistakes we made. They come from the things we didn't do, the words we never said, the steps we were too afraid to take, the chances we let slip by telling ourselves maybe tomorrow, until tomorrow never came. And it's the smallest things, the ones that once seemed silly, that haunt people most when time runs out. A letter never written, a hug never given, a song never learned, a family meal skipped because of work, a trip promised to your spouse that you never took. If you've ever asked yourself, "Am I truly living the way I want to?" then this video might be the gift you need, not to punish your past, but so you won't have to lower your head before the future. In the episodes to come, I'll share with you honestly, from the heart and from the voices of real people, the 12 most common regrets the elderly confess before they take their final breath. And I won't just tell you these stories to open your eyes. I'll tell them so you can avoid them, so you don't repeat them, so that the rest of your life, however long it may be, can be the most peaceful, meaningful, and deeply alive part of all. I wish I had lived true to myself. This is the regret that Nurse Jean, who has listened to hundreds of last words, says she heard more than any other. Not "I wish I had made more money," not "I wish I had earned a higher title," but "I wish I had lived true to myself," not just lived by others' expectations. A life spent trying to be the good one, trying not to upset anyone, trying to be proper, trying not to cause trouble. And in the end, you lose yourself. The regret of not being authentic doesn't come from one big moment. It comes from the countless small ones, when you stayed silent in a family conversation because you didn't want to offend. When you turned down an opportunity because you thought, "I'm too old for that now." When you wore what others chose, spoke how they liked, and forced a smile just to keep the peace even when your soul was screaming something else entirely. Mr. Leonard, 79, spent his life as an administrative clerk at a government office. For 40 years, he was praised as easygoing, agreeable, never a problem. But the first line of his journal read, "I once dreamed of being an artist, but my father said that wasn't a stable career. So I folded up my brushes and tucked them away, and I never opened that drawer again." He said that by the time he retired and dared to pick up a brush again, his hands were shaky, his eyes were weak, and the passion had long faded. No one forbade him. No one ridiculed him. But the fear of being laughed at had stopped him from living as his true self, and the most painful part was, he knew that truth early on but never found the courage to change. Live true to yourself. It sounds like advice for the young, but in truth it's the elderly who understand its worth the most, because the young still have time to change, but the elderly sometimes only have time to regret. Mrs. Nora, 74, once dreamed of being a singer. She had a beautiful voice, but her mother said singing won't feed you, So she studied education, became a teacher, got married, raised children, and forgot she ever had a dream. Only much later, during a casual singing group for seniors, she stood up to sing an old song and cried from the first note to the last. I wasn't crying because of the song, she said. I was crying for the girl I once was, the one with the dream I abandoned for 50 years. Are you living true to yourself? Or are you living as a more acceptable version of yourself, easier to deal with, easier to ignore? Are you wearing a mask, the mask of the always sacrificing mother, the always strong father, the always cheerful grandma, when inside your heart is whispering, I still want to be me. I still want a life of my own. No one else can live your life for you. And no one else is responsible for the things you didn't do except you. If you're still living by others' expectations, ask yourself, what am I afraid of? Being rejected, not being understood, being called selfish. Breaking the image of being a good person. So, do you want to be real for yourself or be fake so others feel more comfortable? How to be yourself after 60. Start with one small thing. Wear what you like without asking anyone's opinion. Say one honest opinion in a conversation. Say no to something you don't want without apologizing for it. Do something you love even if people say that's silly at your age. Write a letter to your true self, the one you've ignored for too long. Living authentically doesn't have to be loud. It just takes one question answered honestly every night. Did I live true to myself today? If the answer is yes, then even if you're not richer, not more famous, not healthier, you are healing. Because nothing heals quite like coming home to yourself. I wish I hadn't worked so much. This sentence echoes time and time again in end-of-life rooms, and not just from CEOs, executives, or business owners, but from people of all walks of life: drivers, teachers, plumbers, office workers. They don't regret the overtime. They regret the moments lost, moments they'll never get back. Mr. Patrick, 81, was once the head accountant for a logistics company in Houston. He was diligent, so much so, they called him the man who never took a lunch break. His desk was famous, always tidy, organized, piled with files. But now, sitting in his recliner flipping through an old photo album, he has only about 30 family photos from 40 years. I don't remember the day I signed the $1 million contract, he says. I only remember missing my daughter's 7th birthday because I had a meeting. The regret of working too much isn't about the job itself. It's about placing it above the things that should have come first. A dinner that was canceled, a phone call, Daddy will be home late, a vacation postponed, a summer without the sound of children laughing. Each small moment, when added up, forms a vast emptiness when you realize you've retired. But your family no longer feels close. Ms. Delilah, 74, was a talented nurse. She worked the night shift for 20 years, saying, I had no choice. My family needed the money. But in her final days, she doesn't remember the number of patients she cared for. She remembers the night her son called crying because his mom didn't come to watch his very first school play. I told myself I'll catch it another time. But some things don't have another time. Work gives you a career. Family gives you memories. Work makes you feel useful, but love makes you feel loved. When we're young, we choose money, believing love can wait. But old age teaches you feelings don't wait, and when you go back to look for them, it might be too late. Are you working too much? Skipping family dinners? Putting off vacations because you're too busy? Have you ever told yourself, I'm sacrificing for them, without ever asking if that's what they really needed? Work-life balance after 60 isn't about splitting hours. It's about redefining your priorities. Ask yourself, am I spending time on what truly matters? Do I know what my children or grandchildren are thinking, dreaming about, hurting from? Have I sat down for a full meal lately without rushing? When you retire, you may still have money, but money can't buy back the time you missed. You can buy gifts, homes, but you can't buy back your child's hug or that kiss from a spouse who is no longer here. Slow living in old age is a choice, not because you're weaker, but because you finally understand the true worth of every passing minute. Starting today, put down your phone during meals, cancel a meeting that can wait. Create a weekend without work, just family. Call someone you haven't spoken to in a long time. And if you can, go find a memory you left behind if it's still out there waiting for you. No one on their deathbed has ever said, "I wish I had written one more report." But many have said, "I wish I had played more with my child, held my wife's hand longer, sat under the sunset just a few minutes more. I wish I had been brave enough to say I love you while I still could." Not everyone dies of a heart attack. Some people die with a heart full of words they never found the courage to say. Not grand declarations, just simple things like, "Son, I'm so proud of you. Honey, I still love you like I did in the beginning. I'm sorry I was too hard on you." But people let those words pass, year after year, and one day, there's no one left to say them to. Emotional regrets in old age don't always come from what we did. They often come from what we didn't say. The silence stretched across decades because we felt embarrassed, too proud, because we thought they already know, or simply, it would feel awkward to say it out loud. Mr. Daniel, 86, from North Carolina, lost his wife after 53 years of marriage. At her funeral, he stood still for a long time in front of her photo. When someone tried to console him, he said softly, "I never actually told her I loved her. I think she knew, but I never said the words." Unspoken love is one of the most painful things to carry. Not because the other person didn't know, but because you know you never dared to say it when you had the chance. Mrs. Miriam, 78, once fell in love with a college friend. They wrote letters. Life pulled them apart. She never told him he was her first and only true love. When she learned he had passed, she sat all night staring at an old letter. She whispered, "I wish I had told him, just once." Are you holding on to words of love you've never spoken? A thank you that never made it to your parents. A sorry still sitting quietly inside because you thought, "I'll say it another time." A hug you hesitated to give, afraid the other person might feel uncomfortable. If so, this is your moment. Saying "I love you" before it's too late is a gift you give yourself. It doesn't need to be accepted. It doesn't need to lead to anything. It just needs to be said, so you know you lived honestly. I once asked an elderly woman, "Have you ever told someone you loved them?" She smiled, "Of course. In my head all the time. But out loud, never. I was afraid." Afraid of what? Afraid they wouldn't feel the same. Afraid of seeming weak. Afraid of being too emotional, or afraid that saying it would change everything. But she also admitted something else. "Now the silence is what scares me most, because it leaves a space no one can fill." How to express feelings after 60. Start small. Write a card. No special occasion needed. Send a message, "Dad is proud of you." Put your hand gently on someone's and say, "I've been thinking about that a lot." Look someone in the eye and say, "You matter to me even if I've never said it." You don't have to wait for someone else to go first. You don't have to wait for the right moment. Time promises nothing to anyone. And if the person you love is no longer here, you can still speak. Write to them. Close your eyes and picture them listening. Because the words you never said don't disappear. They simply wait to be released, so your heart can finally breathe again. Love isn't just for the young. Love is what makes the elderly glow even in their final seasons. And it's never too late to say, "I love you. I miss you. I forgive you. I hope you can forgive me." I wish I had stayed in touch with my old friends. There are people who once meant the world to you and now they're just a name in your memory. Not because you stopped caring, but because life kept moving. You got busy, they got busy, and little by little, silence replaced all the check-ins. Then one day you hear they've passed, and the first thing that comes isn't even tears, but a quiet ache in your chest. I wish I had called. Losing touch with old friends doesn't happen in a single day. It happens gradually with each season, each year. You move, they start a family, You bury yourself in work, they're busy raising kids. You tell yourself, I'll call when I have more time. And year after year, you never call. Mr. Henry, 82, lives alone in a small apartment. He once had a childhood best friend named Martin. They went to school together, got into trouble together, and shared a love for an old song called Blue Moon. But since the age of 40, they never saw each other again. No fights, no falling out, just no more calls. Last year, Henry saw a small obituary in the local paper. Martin W. 83 passed peacefully in his sleep. He folded the paper, pulled out his old cassette player, played Blue Moon, and sat in silence for the entire afternoon. I had his number for 30 years, he said, but I never called. Friendship regrets rarely come from fights, betrayal, or falling out. They come from quiet distance, unintentional silence. No one meant to drift, we just didn't hold on. Mrs. Angela, 76, once had a close-knit group of 4 friends. They called themselves the 4 Musketeers. They traveled together, laughed until they cried, held each other through breakups and breakdowns. But after marriage, life pulled them apart. Christmases, birthdays, holidays, no more calls. By the time Angela finally reached out, one had faded into memory. One was in the hospital. One no longer recognized her voice. We promised we'd grow old together, she said, but none of us realized how quickly old age arrives. Do you have someone who was once a dear friend, but whom you've lost touch with? Someone who once made you laugh until you cried, someone who stood by you at your worst and never left, someone you never said goodbye to, but somehow the silence crept in anyway. How to reconnect with old friends after 60. You don't need to start with an apology. All it takes is a simple message. I just listened to that old song and thought of you. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about the old days. How have you been? It's been too long. We really had some beautiful times, didn't we? You don't need a reply. You don't need to go back to how things were. You just need to reach out. Senior loneliness isn't always about not having people around. Sometimes it's about not having anyone who knew you before you became who you are today. And sometimes just one old friend coming back into your life is enough to make your aging heart feel young again. So open that old drawer, look at the photos, the old addresses, the postcards. Write down the names of those you once cherished, and choose one person to reach out to. Not for anything grand, just because your heart still remembers them even if you've never said it out loud. Friendship doesn't need to be daily. It just needs one truth. Somewhere out there, someone walked through my youth with me, and I still carry them with love. I wish I hadn't neglected my health. Have you ever brushed off a pain thinking it's nothing, I'll rest and it'll go away? Ever taken some medicine half-heartedly and skipped the follow-up? Ever believed that eating poorly, sleeping little, and staying stressed is just what everyone goes through? And then one day, you're lying in a hospital bed hearing the doctor say, I wish you had come in a year earlier. Regrets of not taking care of health are among the most common sighs heard at the bedside when everything else suddenly fades into the background. Work titles, even unfinished dreams. Because when your body breaks down, you can't do anything but sit still and endure. Mr. Luis, 80, was a delivery driver for over 30 years. He was used to skipping breakfast, replacing water with coffee, sleeping only 4 to 5 hours a night. When his back ached, he used pain patches. When his head hurt, he popped painkillers. He never had a full checkup. I feel fine. What's the point? Then one afternoon, climbing into his truck, he felt dizzy, collapsed. A stroke. Paralysis on one side of his body. When he woke up, he couldn't even hold a spoon. I thought I was tough as an ox, he said. Turns out, even oxen fall. Neglecting health in old age isn't just about bad diet or not exercising. It's about no longer listening to your body. You treat it like a machine. As long as it runs, it's fine. You normalize pain and call that strength. You ignore the early warnings until everything collapses. Mrs. Shirley, 73, lives alone in Boston. She ignored chest pains. It's just the weather. She overlooked weight loss. I've just been eating less. She coughed for 2 months, never saw a doctor. By the time they found her lung cancer, it was already stage 3. I spent my whole life taking care of others, she whispered. But I forgot the one person who needed care the most was me. Have you ever said things like, "I don't have time for checkups. I'm old, feeling weak is normal. I've lived with hardship this long, I'm used to it. Why see a doctor when I'm not even sick?" Those things sound reasonable until you lose the ability to walk, to remember, to chew, to swallow, to breathe, to climb stairs. That's when you realize your health didn't wait for you to catch up. Healthy aging after 60 isn't about extreme dieting or pushing yourself at the gym. It starts with one thing: respecting your body, not skipping meals because you're too busy, not overworking it because you need the money, not ignoring that quiet voice each morning whispering, "I'm tired. I need care." So start simple. Drink enough water. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier. Eat slowly without your phone. Walk in the sunlight. Laugh more. Breathe deeper. See the doctor before you're sick while there's still time to prevent what's coming. Listen to your body before it's too late. Don't wait until that voice disappears, because by then you may not get the chance to answer it. And if you've ever felt guilty for how you've treated your body, put your hand on your chest, close your eyes, and whisper, "I'm sorry. Thank you for carrying me all these years. From now on, I'll learn to treat you like a true friend." Health isn't a concern for the weak. It's the foundation for every strong, meaningful thing you still want to do with the life ahead of you. I wish I had forgiven sooner. Not everyone passes away because they didn't love enough. Some leave this world carrying too much anger. Anger toward a father, anger toward a mother, anger toward someone who abandoned them, anger toward themselves for not being good enough, strong enough, worthy enough. And they carried that anger for years, thinking it had faded, thinking it had healed. But at the very end, they exhale one final sigh. "I wish I had forgiven sooner." The regret of not forgiving doesn't come from weak people. It comes from those who were deeply hurt, who held on to pain as a way to survive. But over time, you begin to understand, pain doesn't keep you alive, it just keeps you from fully living. Mrs. Teresa, 84, had her entire savings stolen by her younger sister shortly after her husband died. The two didn't speak for 30 years. Then she heard her sister was gravely ill. She went to the hospital, sat by her bedside, didn't say a word, just sat. And when her sister passed, she cried like a child. "It wasn't the money I regretted," she whispered. "It was the silence. 30 years of not saying a single word." Forgiveness in old age isn't a gift for the one who hurt you. It's a gift for yourself. When you refuse to forgive, you carry that person inside you like a cold stone, heavy and still weighing more and more each year. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean you agree with what happened. It only means, "I no longer want to imprison myself in that pain." Are you holding on to anger? Towards someone who said something that broke you? Towards someone who left when you needed them most? Toward a loved one who didn't live up to what they should have been? Are you angry with yourself for something you didn't do when you were younger? For losing someone you didn't fight harder to keep? For betraying your own ideals? How to let go after 60. You don't need an apology. You don't need reconciliation. You just need one quiet moment, a breath, a whisper to your heart. "I choose peace. I don't want to carry this wound into tomorrow." Maybe you think it's too late. Maybe the person is gone. Maybe they don't deserve forgiveness. But remember this: you deserve to live unchained. Forgiveness isn't the end. It's the beginning of a life no longer ruled by the past. Try writing a letter. Don't send it just right. Make that phone call you've avoided for years. Take a deep breath and say to yourself, "I was hurt, but I don't have to keep hurting." Emotional freedom for seniors isn't some distant dream. It's a choice. All it takes is the courage to put the burden down. All it takes is the willingness to come back to a lighter heart. I wish I had traveled more while I was still healthy. There's something strange about time. When you're young, you say, "I'll go." Just not yet. When you finally have the money, you think, "I'll go." But work is too busy right now. Then when you retire, you tell yourself, "I'll go." But now, my health won't let me. And just like that, you miss all the journeys you never needed a reason to take. Mrs. Helen, 79, had dreamed of visiting Venice since she was 17 after seeing a photo of its shimmering canals in a geography book. She told her mother, "One day I'll go there." But then she got married, had children, paid for rent, for medicine, for life. And that dream quietly moved to the back corner of her heart. After her husband passed and her children grew up, she remembered Venice. She bought a ticket, but her heart wasn't strong enough for a 14-hour flight. "I left the dream waiting too long," she whispered. "And when I finally came back for it, it wasn't waiting anymore." Travel regrets in old age don't come from how many countries you didn't visit. They come from never going to the place your soul longed for because you always said, "I'll go some other time." But life has no pause button. You can't save a dream as a draft, then return decades later and expect it to be exactly the same. Mr. Carl, 82, had planned to visit the Grand Canyon 3 times. The first time he worked late. The second, his car broke down. The third, his son got married. When he turned 80, his son offered to take him. Carl shook his head. "I can't hike anymore." And so one of the world's greatest wonders remained only in his imagination. Have you ever said, "I'll go when I'm free. I'll think about myself once the kids are settled. Now isn't the time to travel"? What's so special about those places anyway? But you forgot one thing. We don't travel just to reach a destination. We travel to find ourselves in a new space, in a new sky, in a new rhythm. See the world before it's too late. Not to post about it, not to prove anything, but to open your heart, to step out of your usual room, sit on a foreign street, listen to unfamiliar winds, smell new bread. Look up at a different shade of sky and realize life is bigger than you ever imagined. Life beyond routine after 60 isn't wishful thinking. It's a reminder you can still live more if you dare to step out. Write down the places you once dreamed of. They don't have to be far. Maybe just a nearby hill, a quiet countryside in bloom, a museum you always passed but never entered, a peaceful beach without a crowd, a place just to breathe slowly. Book that trip. You don't need anyone's permission, only your heart's approval. And if someone ever asks, "You're still traveling at your age?" smile and say, "Exactly, because of my age. I need to go. I'm not going to prove anything. I'm going to remind myself that I'm still alive." You don't have to start over, you just have to start living from this moment on. If you're still here right now after walking through every chapter, every sorrow, every slante, every unanswered question, then you are already braver than most. You've dared to look back, to listen to things people often avoid, to reopen doors of memory you may have shut long ago. And that is the first step toward healing. You don't need to fix your entire life. You don't need to start everything over. You just need to live differently from today. More honestly, more slowly, with more gratitude, with more forgiveness, listening more deeply, loving more clearly, and daring to do the things you once thought were too late. You're no longer young, but you are still alive. You still have a heart that can feel, a soul that can heal, hands that can give, and feet, though slower now, that can still lead you toward beautiful things. Live without regrets. Not because you never made mistakes, but because you've learned from them, and you've chosen not to repeat them. Start again at any age. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need the perfect moment. You only need to place your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat and say, "I'm still here, and this time, I will truly live." You are not here just to exist. You are here to leave a mark on the earth in someone's heart and along your own life's journey. We believe old age is not the final chapter. It is the deepest and the purest part of your life. Don't let it slip away in silence. And if you ever need someone to walk with you, a daily reminder, a voice that touches your heart when it feels weak, follow the life after 60, because every video here is an extended hand, a gentle invitation, a small light that softly tells you, you are not alone. There is still so much beauty ahead of you, and you deserve a life without regret. We wish you a peaceful afternoon, a restful sleep light on your soul, and a new tomorrow, where you begin again with a lighter heart.